All right, Programming 12. So now you've had a chance to wrestle with the idea of the button class. You've programmed it. And if you're watching this video, that I'm hoping that you have figured out how to make the void draw and void setup to work with it. If you haven't figured that out yet, then definitely talk with people around you and with me as well to make sure you're understanding that. Don't move on to this video until you're ready for that, because otherwise you won't be able to test if this is working. So now we're going to go into a couple of additional things to try for your checkpoint. So in addition to making like this original sketch work and making it so you click on the background, I'd like you to do two more things. The first thing is, let's get rid of some repeated code. Oh, there's some ugly repeated code in this. And that's okay. It was there intentionally because sometimes when you're programming, at first you're just trying to get your ideas out, and that's okay. But then go and clean up your code and make it look beautiful. Let's take a look at a few examples. Oh gosh, look at this long guy here. This long Boolean expression, it's called. It all amounts to true or false, right? And this is the logic about whether or not the mouse is inside of a rectangle, assuming X and Y is now the center instead of the top corner, top left-hand corner. So that is repeated here, and it's repeated here. Ugh, it's so long. It's hard to. It's like, and it's repeated even here in three places, right? At the bottom on the if statement. So that is another place where it is repeated. Oh, so let's make ourselves a function. It'll be another behavior function, and it can be just encoding the logic of whether or not this thing is being the mouse is on top of it. So we can make a Boolean function. Boolean touching mouse. Now the way Boolean functions work, I don't know if you remember, we talked about it in the review, but you need to use the return keyword to return true or return false or return a Boolean expression which evaluates a true or false that will answer a question. And so we need to be able to send it numbers, but in this case, because it's already inside of the button class, it already knows these numbers. We don't have to send it anything because those variables are available to it. They have scope that it can look at. So what I'd like to do is take this code and somehow find a way to build it into your Boolean touching mouse function. So then once that's done, I can say touching mouse. I want to be able to say that. And I want to say that over here as well. And I want to be able to say that mouse released and touching mouse. Like I want to be able to replace those places with this function. So you do need to use the return keyword. And if that math, if I back it up, if this math is true, you want to return true. And if that math is false, you want to return false. And then you can replace these big chunks of code with a mouse, a touching mouse function. There's even more you could do after that, but that's a good place to start. I would love to take this, for example, instead of having a comment, I'd like to call this like draw rect and then draw text label. Break that into functions as well. So ultimately the show function should look like draw button body or something. I'm not too sure what you want to call it. It's like the rectangle. Draw rect. Draw label. And then I guess the last thing about it is like check if you're being clicked or not. So we can say check for click. And I want you to take this code, all here and break it up into those three different functions. So ultimately your show function will just look like this. It'll just have those things, but of course you'll have declared void draw rect, which has the rect drawing the rect drawing code. You'll have declared void draw label, which will have the label drawing code. So everything's broken down into bite-sized functions that are just so much more clean than our original program, where everything was just shoved into the show function like this. It's like, oh, so much. This isn't an absolute disaster. It's not bad because it's not that long, and I'm definitely know some people will just kind of grumble about it and be like, well, why do I have to blah blah blah? But it is absolutely a hallmark of professional code if it is broken down into smaller functions, and is just a really good habit to get into for any kind of programming in the future. So that's task number 1, is to functionally decompose your button class. So make a Boolean function for this, and make functions for the drawing of the button, maybe the label versus the body, and then checking if it's clicked. Make all those things into separate functions. Okay, so that's the part of it. The next part is I want you to make a new constructor and modify your class so that if you decide to, you can send an image instead of text. So I want you to modify it and think about, oh, does that mean we need to make we need to do something different here? Does that mean we need to do something slightly different to make it work? Quite possibly. So in other words, sometimes we want to send text, sometimes we want to send an image, and the image is actually what we draw on the body of the button. So we can have like a interesting looking button. And I don't know too much about the mouse over stuff. We'll maybe look into the tint function in the future just to make it change. But for now, you could just maybe make the button sort of like the image just sort of inside of the button, so you can see the background change of the button itself, like the highlight versus the normal color. That could still show through around the edges. Okay, so I'd like you to make a new constructor where you could choose to send an image instead of a string. That means you'll probably have to create a new instance variable to store that image, and then you'll have to decide, do I show the text or do I show an image instead? And try to keep the functions built in. Try to keep those functions really still solid. Don't go back on the old way of doing things. And that'll allow you to create a button that has an image for a label as opposed to a button that has a text label. Okay, so that's going to be your activity. So the button class, first step is, I gotta get rid of that. First step is just to get it to work. We did that in our last checkpoint, that's first part of the checkpoint. Then I want you to make it so that you break it down into functions way better than it already has been done. And then I want you to make it so that the image is, it's possible to put an image on the button as opposed to a label. You could do both. You could still put a label on it if you want to, but you also have the option by making a second constructor that will allow you to, glue a picture onto the front. Okay, so that's the checkpoint. Best of luck with that, and thanks for your efforts. We'll probably go over this in class together to make sure things are going smoothly for you. Okay, good luck, everybody.